Welcome to the Truth to You podcast, a daily dose of spiritual inspiration and encouragement for the whole family. I'm Pastor Scott, and I'm so glad you've joined us. Each day, we'll dive into God's Word with a devotional designed to bring your family closer to the Lord and to each other. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Truth to You podcast. It is Friday, and I want to congratulate you on almost making it through another week. If this is Friday morning that you are listening to this, I hope that you're able to start off with some quiet time with the Lord. Isn't it amazing how quickly our day comes at us? And if we don't take time to get on our knees, talk to the Lord, and really, begin that conversation with Him, oh, how easily it can get away from us. And before we know it, we are completely absorbed in the things of the day. Hey, want to just say, excited about what the Lord is doing at our church. If you are a member at Temple Baptist Church, in the wake of our revival, just seeing some really good involvement as far as our newest outreach opportunity, and we're calling it an outreach of thankfulness. Getting a chance to fill out some postcards, send it to some folks, and had about 25 people in the fellowship hall this past week from 6 to 6:30. Got a little over 100 postcards filled out and in the mail, and got a couple weeks left of that. We're going to do this right up until Thanksgiving. So if you've not had a chance to get involved, and I know there were some folks who have been battling sickness. I got some text messages, people who wanted to come. We hope that they are feeling better, but we hope that others will have a chance to join us next week. Okay, we're in the book of Nahum, and we are blazing a trail through chapter 3, and we're going to get to verse number 8 in here in just a moment. I want to mention that right now in my office, I've got smoked caramel praline. I'd say cooking, but it's not on the stove. It's a candle, and there are candles that smell good enough to eat, although I wouldn't try. This one is maybe one of those, and it's good. I've got maybe, 1/5 left on it, and so that will burn for a while. And then I'm really getting to the end of my candle stash. I went crazy asking for candles for Christmas, 4 or 5 years ago. And I'm kind of at the place where I need some more. So we'll see what happens. Christmas isn't too far off in the distance, and who knows, maybe some more candles, hopefully not only candles for Christmas, but I digress. Okay. All right. Nahum chapter 3, and I want to get into verse 8 here, and this is just continued conversation that the Lord has started via Nahum, and really it's a proclamation against the people in Assyria. And this was Nineveh. This was wicked Nineveh, who had really put off the mercy and grace of God and had just not been willing to bend the knee. And now they find themselves about 150 years removed from when Jonah entered the city and preached to them, and the city experienced somewhat of a revival. And now things are back to the way that they were, if not worse. And so as the judgment is going out against them, we've learned some different things. But one of the things that I think that we see here, starting in verse 8, is I believe that we're sort of reminded just how the Lord does so well in the scriptures and the way that He communicates with us to illustrate His point. Part of good preaching, good teaching, as we see it exemplified in the scriptures, and as we know how the Lord tends to relay information to us, is He illustrates. And so it's more than just a teaching or a truth. It's something that comes with an example. And this comes in many different forms. We understand that as Jesus spent time with His disciples and as He taught people, He would constantly look around. He'd point at a tree. He'd point at the water. He would illustrate with animals and such. And this would allow the people to take what they had been taught or were being taught, and then kind of see it played out in everyday life in some type of method or a concept or something like that. And so, the Lord, as He's giving the realities of His judgment and communicating them as this form of prophecy, just outflows from Nahum, we see in verse 8 that now he goes to illustrate. And he starts with these words. He says, "Art thou better?" He poses a question to the Assyrian people. "Art thou better than populous No? That was situated among the rivers that had the waters round about it, whose ramparts was the sea, and her wall was from the sea." Okay, so no, he begins to illustrate here. Okay, this isn't a hypothetical situation. He's drawing attention towards an example of how God had enacted his judgment actually through the Assyrians, but on another group of people. And who he mentions here is No. Okay, now the reference here is to populous No. Another name for that would have been No Ammon. That's the Hebrew name for what we know today as the ancient city of Thebes. And this was in major. It was a major city in Egypt. Excuse me. And this is probably another place that I have to put on my list of places to visit. I didn't know much about this place, but as I took some time in preparation for the podcast, there's a lot to be learned about this amazing city. And I was doing some reading about it, and I'm going to take a second just to give you a little bit of context, so that we can kind of grasp what this situation was. And let me say this No Ammon, this city, this Thebes, this would have been familiar to the Assyrian. Why? Because it would have been shortly before this time that they would have gone and conquered this area. So the Lord is bringing this up. It would have been familiar to them, but who is this? What are we talking about here? And this was probably in my reading, this was one of the greatest and most really secure cities of the ancient world, because of the way that it was situated and where they decided to build it. Students of Egyptian history actually consider this to be the first great city of the Near East, and describing its ruins as some of the most magnificent and ancient civilizations really anywhere in the world. And so this is a fascinating city. I mean, it'd be great if we could just uproot and take a little field trip there. That'd be awesome. But to give you some context about how large this was, they said that the ruins there that have been unearthed today of this great city are 27 miles, scattered across 27 miles of earth. I mean, that is a massive, massive city. Some of the ancient writings say that this city had up to 100 gates. Okay, a lot of times we tend to read about Jerusalem, and we think about all the different gates that it had, but nowhere near the amount of gates that this place would have had. So we know a little bit about it, but let's see the description that the Lord gives when he uses this comparison or this example. He says, "Art thou better than this?" And let me just say this before we read any further. What is the Lord telling us? He's reminding us that not only is he the master illustrator, we also see that God reveals his unchanging character in that he is not a respecter of persons. You see this from time to time in our society, where an individual will hold one standard for one person and then another standard for another. And when we would say that's not justice, right? Well, when we talk about the Lord, he is the righteous judge. He is the epitome of justice. And what do we know about him? Well, we know that he's no respecter of persons. And so his question here to the Assyrian people, "Art thou better than this other?" Now, obviously, the answer is no. But let me keep reading, because it says not only was this city unique, it was surrounded by water. Notice what it says. That was situated among the rivers that had the waters round about it, whose rampart was the sea, and her wall was the sea. So you can imagine that while this city was going to be under attack, they felt in themselves that they were impenetrable. Why? Because of the natural barriers that were around them that would help them protect the city. And the Bible says that the sea was their rampart, or it was their fortress. This was meant to protect them, and it was her wall from the sea. But notice verse 9. The Bible says Ethiopia and Egypt were her strengths, and it was infinite. Put and Lubim were thy helpers. Okay, so the Lord is showing us, or rather showing the advantage that this group of people had even over the situation that the Assyrians find themselves in, being in the capital city there in Nineveh. And what was that advantage? Well, verse 9 shows us that they had these helpers. The city here of Thebes, the Egyptians, they had not secluded themselves or made enemies with other people around them. Well, that was the place that Assyria was in. They had no friends. They had no help. And yet the Lord is saying, think about this. Think about the strategic location of Thebes. Okay, think about all those advantages. Did it help in the end? No. Okay, now think about all the support that city had. Okay, all of the fail-safes that were there with the support groups that were around them. Did that help in that situation? The answer is no. Let's keep going. Verse 10. Yet was carried away. She went into captivity. Her young children were also dashed in pieces at the top of all the streets. How horrific. And they cast lots for her honorable men, and all her great men were bound in chains. What happened? These men were sold off. They were sold as slaves, and then the greatest among them were bound in chains, and they were taken away into captivity. So who would have done this? Well, the Assyrians. This was what the Assyrians did to people. So he's saying this. Listen, you take a second and think about this. Now, I'm not a respecter of the Lord here. I'm not a respecter of persons. And you know what my judgment looked like on this group of people. And he describes it. Okay, so how are you any different? And the answer was that they're not. All of those things that they did to other people were going to be happening to them. Verse 11, thou also shalt be drunken. Thou shalt be hid. Thou shalt also seek strength because of thine enemy. This is what you're going to think. The Lord is telling them, I'm going to tell you what you're going to think before you get there. In this moment, this is what you're going to do. Which, okay, this again, Assyria would have been so prideful. They would have thought, no, we're the greatest. We don't need anyone. We like our fortress better than the next guy. Everything's going to be fine. And then the Lord begins to tell him what they're going to be thinking. And, this is just so typical of man in our pride and our arrogance. And sometimes we can do this as Christians as well. Sometimes, the things that we believe are not really connected with reality. In fact, we find that a lot. Sometimes we live even as Christians apart from the reality of God's truth. And we get in trouble for that, but that's exactly what's happening here. And yet the Lord's going to say, he's going to say, listen, you don't believe this, and you don't think this is the way it's going to happen. But let me just tell you, in this moment, when my judgment comes, let me tell you your thought process. Number one, you're going to be drunken. Now, I think this is a little bit of imagery here, okay? Because I think this is speaking more in a sense of when someone, gets intoxicated, their judgment, the way that they judge things or the way that they factor things, it's not connected with reality, right? Their vision is impaired, their understanding is impaired, their concentration is impaired. And the Lord's just simply saying this, you're in this moment, it's almost as if you're going to be drunk. In other words, all of these things that are going to happen to you. And in that moment, guess what? You're going to be self-deceived. You are going to be under the control, not of reality, or not affected with reality, but rather you're going to be in a delusive state. And so, or a delusionary state, we might say. So this is kind of the mindset. So he tells them that you're also going to be drunken. What else does he say? He says, thou shalt be hid. Okay, so first of all, your first instinct is going to be you're just going to be drunk with your own pride. This can't happen. Denial. This won't happen. Number two, you're going to hide. Can you imagine, right? The Assyrians hiding? What? That's impossible. Have you seen their city? Have you seen Nineveh? Have you seen their army? Have you seen? You're going to hide. This is just how it is. And in that moment, you're going to go from denial, and then you're going to go directly towards, okay, we need to hide. We need to protect ourselves. We need to take ourselves out of this precarious situation. What else does he say? Let's keep reading. And he says this, thou also shalt seek strength because of the enemy. Okay, this was not in the Assyrians' character. They had made enemies of every person around them. They didn't need anybody. They didn't want any help. They were a world power, and in their mind, there is no one that they could not handle or take charge over. And so their reaction to trouble was to pony up and fight. Their response to difficulty was not to call for help. And yet, what's going to happen? Well, the Lord's going to humble them in such a way that they're going to do things that they thought they never would ever do. And one of those things is call for backup. And who is it that had all the backup in the world and yet was not able to survive the judging hand of God? Well, again, that was thieves, right? And now we visit the city and we look on and we marvel at what great a city had toppled in that day. But again, we're seeing God's judgment unfold here, and he communicates it. He communicates it in a unique fashion. And so, let's again take heed. This would not be a fun place to be under the judging hand of God, and that's not a place that we as Christians need to be. And we can stay far away from that. We can encourage others to do so as well. But isn't it interesting, the self-deception that we see here in verse number 11? And oh my, how even we as Christians can be self-deceived. Let's not be that today. Let's depend and lean on the Lord. In all our ways, acknowledge him. And what's the promise that comes with it? That he shall direct our path. I think that's a positive note for us to end on today. And when you come back, we will be in Nahum chapter 3, and we'll be starting off in verse 12, probably a couple more episodes, and then we'll be at the end of this short book. Thanks for joining us. I hope you have a great weekend. We will see you next time.